Hello, this is Emily Bennett. I was completely excluded from my family's private jet trip. There was no conversation, no warning, no notice, just quietly and silently erased. My name was taken off the passenger list, removed without explanation, and replaced by someone else, as if I had never existed at all. But the most painful part wasn't the exclusion itself. What truly hurt was all the time I spent trying to convince myself that it must have been some kind of misunderstanding or mistake. All the countless moments I sat at their table, fully believing that I truly belonged there. Until the day came when I finally realized I was never meant to have a seat in the first place. And when the flight crew said, "Welcome aboard, ma'am," to the new designated owner, I couldn't help but laugh. Because that greeting, that moment, was the truth. But why did that truth disturb them more deeply than all the lies they had told and lived with before? A cup of coffee rested in my hands, poured into my favorite ceramic mug, warm and comforting. My husband, Noah, had already left the house earlier that morning. I was scrolling through my phone, more out of habit than purpose, aimlessly flipping through emails. That's when I came across a post from my niece. It was a short boomerang-style video, champagne glasses clinking mid-air, captured in a loop, and in the background, unmistakably, the family's private jet. The caption read, "Annual family trip prep. Can't wait for takeoff." My thumb froze in place, halted in mid-scroll, unable to move any farther. The yearly private jet trip with my family, an old, long-standing tradition that originated in my parents' home, carried on for years as a marker of status and unity. My sister Natalie, in particular, always made it painfully and unmistakably clear that while I was technically family, I didn't quite belong. I didn't fit neatly into their perfectly curated version of how things were supposed to be done. Out of instinct, I tapped on the post and kept scrolling, though my stomach had already begun to twist. Familiar faces filled the screen. There was Natalie, her signature tight smile stretched across her face. Her husband Lucas stood beside her, and their children gathered around, all dressed for departure. My mother, Chloe, held a mimosa delicately in one hand, looking as composed as ever. My father, true to his nature, sat a bit removed from the group, silent and observant, exactly as I remembered. Everyone was present. Every single person was there except for me. There's a group chat that used to be called Preston Air Affair. It had once buzzed with updates, itinerary tweaks, and inside jokes until the day Natalie removed me from it. That was years ago, and it had remained silent on my end ever since. Still, some part of me hoped, so I checked anyway. But there was nothing. No new messages. No emails. No last-minute updates about the trip. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the blank screen. Beside me, the coffee I had poured earlier into my favorite mug had grown cold and bitter. My heart wasn't racing. It was something worse. A stillness. And a sinking certainty that this wasn't a mistake, it was deliberate. That afternoon, while rinsing glasses at the kitchen sink, my phone lit up with a message from Natalie. But it wasn't addressed to me. It was a screenshot of a group text. Finalized seating chart. One name crossed out, mine. Beside it, confirmed for Belle. Belle is Natalie's housekeeper. The next message was a voice memo. Natalie's voice, laughing. "Well, at least the cabin won't feel so tense this year." Tense? I set the phone down without replying. My hands weren't shaking, but my jaw hurt from clenching too hard. At dinner that night, I didn't bring it up right away. Noah seemed distracted. "My family's planning another jet trip," I said lightly. He glanced up. "Yeah, your mom mentioned it last week." I tilted my head. "Am I on the list?" He frowned. "Of course. Why wouldn't you be?" I smiled, not wanting to stir anything. Just curious. He looked back at his phone. "I'll double-check if you want." He won't. He never does. That night I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling fan slicing through the air. Over and over, my mind replayed the moments I had been quietly excluded. The birthday party without an invitation. The brunch I only learned about through Instagram. The conversations that stopped the moment I walked in. This was deliberate. The worst part was that no one ever said it out loud. At some point, you stop asking why you're not included. And you start asking why you kept trying to be. Before turning off the bedside lamp, I wrote a single line in my journal. Observe, do not react yet. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Natalie. A message that looked polite but cut like a blade. Hey Emily, I just realized we might have forgotten to book your seat on the jet. Totally my oversight? Reservations filled up faster than I expected this year. So sorry. There it was. Her signature blend of sugar and venom. No room for discussion. No offer of a solution. Just a casual acknowledgement that I'd been erased, framed as a clerical slip. I didn't reply. I wasn't sure my fingers could be trusted not to betray the calm I was fighting to maintain. Later that morning, I received an email from the jet charter company. Cancellation confirmation, seat release successfully processed. I blinked and opened the email, reading it again. The request had been logged 3 days earlier. The requester's name, Natalie Morgan. So that's how it was. I stared at the screen. Not tears, just a sudden pressure behind my eyes that blurred the view. I forwarded the email to myself and printed it. One clean, crisp copy. I slid it into the manila folder in the bottom drawer labeled Taxes Assets. By the time Noah got home, the sun was low. I waited until he pulled out a beer before speaking. Natalie texted me, I said. He took a sip. Yeah? About the jet trip? She said she forgot to reserve my seat. He frowned. Really? Well, maybe it was just a miscommunication. It wasn't, I said calmly, and showed him my phone. I got the cancellation email. She submitted it 3 days ago. Noah stared at the screen, the lines on his forehead deepening. The lightness in his face disappeared, replaced by something hard. This is awful. He set the beer bottle down hard on the counter. This isn't a mistake, it's deliberate. Yes, I said. He turned to me and placed his hands on my shoulders. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. You've been sending signs for so long and I ignored them to keep the peace with your family. But that ends now. His voice carried a kind of anger and resolve I had never heard before. I'm going to talk to Natalie, right now. He called her immediately, but she didn't answer. So he typed a message. Sis, what the hell is going on? Explain what you did to Emily. There was no reply. That night, I sat at the dining table and opened my laptop. Instead of scrolling through old albums, I opened a new note titled What She Did That I Let Slide. The list filled up faster than I expected. By the time I finished, my jaw ached again. But not from anger this time, from clarity. Noah sat beside me and read the list in silence. Then he said softly, I saw all of this too. And I did nothing. I'm really sorry. I placed my hand over his. An apology doesn't erase the past. But for the first time, I didn't feel alone. That jet wasn't just a mode of transportation to me. It wasn't something given to me by anyone else. It was the first thing I ever bought for myself. It was mine. Born from 6 years of late-night work and countless rejections. When the company finally turned a profit, I bought that private jet. Quietly, without a grand announcement. I still remember signing the check. My hand didn't even tremble. Even so, for legal reasons, I included Noah's name on the ownership papers. It'll make taxes cleaner and things easier down the line, the accountant said. Down the line. And that's exactly what happened. Because within a few months, the jet became a part of family lore. But not my family. No, it was the Morgan family jet. Morgan Air Legacy. That exact phrase came from Natalie during one of the last family brunches I was still invited to. I remember her raising a glass and saying, "There's something so meaningful about traditions tied to things owned by a family." She turned briefly toward me, eyes narrowed. And how wonderful that Emily supports that. Supports. As if I were some kind of event planner. As if the jet didn't exist because of me. A few days ago, an old podcast clip popped up on my phone. She was smiling at the host and saying, "The jet isn't just a place. It's where my family connects. It represents our continuity, our name, our story." This wasn't about being excluded from a trip. It was about being erased from what I built. They weren't just keeping me off the jet. They were trying to cut me out of the story itself. I got out of bed and pulled open the bottom drawer of the dresser. I took out every stash document, ownership certificates, bank transfer records. I spread them across the bed. They looked like evidence for a trial I never intended to prosecute. There was no rage, no tears, just a low, smoldering resolve. They tried to erase me, I whispered, tracing the ink of signatures that proved otherwise. Let's see how that works out for them. They were live streaming that dinner. A notification popped up from Natalie's profile. Laughter echoed in the background, glasses clinked. The caption read, "Pre-flight family dinner. So grateful for legacy and love." They were all there. No one had told me about the dinner. It was orchestrated. Then Natalie stood to make a toast. Her voice was soft, rehearsed. Moments like these remind us what makes our family special. People who carry on tradition with intention. She continued, "We only invite those who truly understand what this legacy means, or who add to it, not take from it." That line. That carefully delivered little knife. I paused the video, rewound it, and watched it again. No names were mentioned. But everyone who followed her would know exactly who was being excluded. Noah was visible in the frame, but he wasn't sipping wine. His arms were crossed, his face hard as he looked at Natalie. I knew he was there to make one final appeal. And I knew it hadn't worked. When he came home that night, his face was lined with fatigue and anger. "I saw the video," I said quietly. He let out a long sigh. I tried to talk to her before the dinner, but she wouldn't listen. She told me to stay out of family matters. Like I was some outsider. He sat beside me. "We don't have to tiptoe around them anymore." "What do you want to do?" "Whatever you decide, I'm 100% with you." I nodded and placed my hand over his. The next morning, I printed the transcript of Natalie's speech from the livestream. I highlighted the sentence about those who understand the meaning of tradition. Then I slid it into the folder. And I typed a message. "I hope your speech was sincere. Let's see how well it holds up when we talk face to face." I hit send. That afternoon, I booked a car to the airport. What I packed were documents, copies, receipts. What I packed was the truth. As Noah loaded my suitcase into the car, he said, "I'll go ahead. See you at the gate." He kissed my forehead. "You're not alone." Before the sun was fully up, I stepped out of the car. The private terminal was quiet. I wore a simple black dress. I had dressed for a moment I had planned for quietly and deliberately. And then I saw them. Natalie was standing near the boarding gate. Her posture was perfect. She lifted her face, and then she saw me. For a breathless moment, her entire expression froze. Her eyes narrowed, and her hand stopped mid-air holding a champagne flute. My mother turned around too. There was no shock on her face, only a faint look of inconvenience. And then there was Noah. He had been standing at the edge of the family circle, but the moment he saw me, he turned away from them without hesitation and walked directly toward me. He didn't say a word, just stood beside me and held my hand. That simple gesture spoke louder than anything he could have said. I didn't slow my steps. Together with Noah, I walked toward the group around Natalie, and as we neared, they began shifting uncomfortably. I stopped just in front of them, gave a sharp nod, and walked past. The jet crew didn't flinch. A tall woman in a navy blazer stepped aside and gave me a discreet, respectful bow as I climbed the stairs. Then I heard a voice. "Welcome aboard, Mizu Bennett," the lead crew member said, loud enough to echo across the terminal. "The owner is now on board. What should we do about the accompanying guests?" It wasn't just a greeting. It was a declaration. I didn't need to look back to know what Natalie's face looked like. The crew member's voice dropped into a respectful tone, just for me. "We've been awaiting the owner's permission before takeoff." I met her eyes. "Proceed." She nodded and walked toward the cockpit. The engines roared to life. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't someone to be sidelined. I was the gatekeeper now. Natalie was pacing nervously, fluffing cushions, rearranging magazines. As expected, she soon walked into the lounge area with her phone in hand. I watched her adjust the camera angle to catch the best light. Her voice turned syrupy. "Hi everyone. I'm so excited to share a little glimpse of our family tradition today. Family is everything. Legacy, loyalty, love. She kept going. The people here, well, they understand what it means to build something that lasts. Behind her, there was movement. One of the crew members, passing by, spoke clearly and casually. "An honor to have you on board again, Owner Bennett." She froze. For a moment the live stream was swallowed by strange silence. It was already too late. Comments began flooding in under the live feed. "Wait, she's the owner?" Wow, the way the energy just shifted. Natalie ended the stream, but the damage was done. 10 minutes later, she found me in the hallway. "Did you plan this?" she hissed. "Don't play dumb, Emily. I didn't ask him to say anything. I just let you speak your truth and watched it all fall apart. You don't deserve to be on this jet." I slowly stood up. "That's the point, Natalie. I don't need to belong. I bought my place here." She blinked as if I had slapped her, then turned and walked away. The dining area shimmered in soft, calculated lighting. Dessert had just been served. I didn't touch mine. When she stood for the closing toast, her voice was polished. "I'd like to thank everyone here tonight. This isn't just luxury. It's legacy. People who carry on our family's story, who uphold its dignity, who understand the value of what we've built, those are the people who make this tradition meaningful." She never looked at me, but the subtext screamed in bold. I waited for the murmurs to settle. Then, without raising my voice, I stood. "I'd like to contribute something to this conversation about legacy," I said. Natalie froze with her glass suspended in the air. I pulled out a transcript printed on company letterhead from my leather folder and laid it flat in the center of the table. "This is from last month's Zoom call between Natalie and our family's legal counsel." My finger tapped a highlighted line. "She doesn't truly understand the values of this family," I read aloud. "She doesn't respect our way of doing things." The color drained from Natalie's face. "And yet," I continued, sliding a second sheet onto the table, "this is the purchase agreement for the jet. Down payment made by Emily Bennett. Listed as sole investor and primary legal co-owner." "I didn't bring this out to cause drama," I said. "I'm just done being discussed behind closed doors." My mother cleared her throat as if to interrupt. "Emily, this isn't the place." But it was Noah who cut in. "Mom, stop," he said, quiet but firm. "Let Emily speak. She has the right to be heard. We all have the duty to listen." His words silenced her. I continued. "For years I've let things slide. But let me be clear. This isn't about asking to be included anymore. This is about being seen." Natalie opened her mouth, but all that came out was a stammer. I was just trying to protect the family." "Did you think I'd stay silent?" I said quietly. "And you were almost right." The carefully curated ambience began to fracture. I looked at Natalie again. "You can keep building your version of the story. Just not on top of my name." She dropped into her chair. I gathered the papers and returned them neatly to the folder. Before leaving, I paused and said, "If you want to know the truth, don't ask the loudest voice in the room. Ask the one holding the evidence." That night, the only sound left was the soft thrum of the jet engines. After dinner, the small groups dispersed. Later, when I returned to our private room, Noah was waiting. He wrapped his arms around me. There was no regret in that embrace, only pride and relief. "You were truly strong," he whispered. "I'm proud of you, and I'm glad to be by your side." I buried my face into his chest. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a shared victory. It was something I had never received from him before. "Thank you for staying with me," I said. "I know," he replied. We didn't say anything else. Sometimes, the most powerful words are spoken through action. In the morning, before anyone else on the jet had stirred, I sat alone in the lounge drinking coffee. One by one, people came and went. Some paused not to apologize, but also not to distance themselves. They nodded. Later in the morning, my phone rang. It was Ethan. "Emily, I want to apologize," Ethan said, his voice quieter than usual, carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. "For even considering the documents that Natalie tried to draft and put in front of me. I never should have entertained the idea, not even for a moment. I should have refused immediately, without hesitation, and I didn't." I said nothing. Instead, I allowed the silence between us to stretch out and speak for me. It said more than words ever could. "You've always been the rightful owner," he continued, the tone in his voice now firm with conviction. "Not just legally, not just on paper, but in spirit too. In every way that matters." I thanked him sincerely, with a steady voice and a full heart, and then I ended the call. Back in the lounge, I found Sienna sitting comfortably with her laptop open in front of her. "I posted it," she said, her eyes scanning the screen one final time. On the glowing display was a polished, beautifully written essay. The title read, "The Woman They Tried to Erase, A Lesson on Silence, Ownership, and Standing on Your Own." My name was written clearly in the byline beneath it. "Do you want me to take it down?" she asked, her voice serious and gentle at the same time. "No," I said without hesitation. "This isn't about revenge. It's not about retaliation or drama." "No," Sienna replied, offering me a quiet smile full of calm strength. "This is a record. A record of what happened. A record of who you are." That afternoon, Noah came to find me. There was a different energy in him, calmer, more grounded. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began in a steady, even voice. "I made a vow to protect you, to stand by you, and I haven't always lived up to that. I've let you down in ways I'm only now beginning to understand. And I'm sorry. From now on, no matter what, I will be your shield. Always." He reached for my hand and took it in his, holding it with care and purpose. "Let's change the ownership papers to your name alone. You've earned that 100 times over." I looked at him long and hard. This was never about the title. It was about being fully seen. At last he nodded. "I know, but this is my way of showing it." And that meant more than any offer of ownership. That night, I was in the lounge again, alone, but I wasn't guarding my space anymore. I was occupying it. The cabin was empty. And for the first time, it didn't feel like exile. Just before landing, my mother approached me. This time, she looked small. "I didn't see before," she said without preface. "But now I do." I waited. That was all she offered. Not an apology, just acknowledgement. It was enough. I didn't reply. I simply nodded, once, slowly, firmly. Some wounds closed without a sound. Home welcomed me back, as if it had been holding its breath. Everything felt different. I set my suitcase in the front hall, and let the silence settle. By Wednesday, I was organizing the drawer in the hallway display cabinet. That's when I found it. A small folded note. My father's handwriting. "Don't fight for a seat. Build your own table." I had no memory of when he gave it to me. I sat with that piece of paper for a long time. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my niece, Maria. "I hope I'm not overstepping, but I've been thinking a lot about that trip, about you. You're the only one in this family who built something herself. You made it. I'm applying to this business mentorship program, and if you're willing, could you look over my application?" My answer was simple. Yes, of course. That's when I realized legacy begins quietly. A week later, I hosted Sunday brunch. Nothing formal. Just eggs, toast, fresh strawberries, and the people who had earned a seat at my table. Noah brewed coffee. Sienna brought lemon bars. Ethan arrived with his wife, and I gave them the sunniest seats by the window. "Not everyone needs to come," I said to Noah. "Only the ones connected by heart, not blood." He nodded and kissed my temple. I had traded legacy for truth, and it fit better. That dining table we gathered around wasn't from my parents' house, nor the one my sister had tried to construct. It was mine. That day, there were no formal toasts, no carefully rehearsed speeches, only conversations. Simple, honest conversations that flowed freely and without script. They were genuine, spontaneous exchanges, filled with warmth and laughter that didn't need to be staged or captured on camera to feel real. I looked around the room and saw the faces of people who had come not out of obligation, not out of tradition, but simply because they truly wanted to be there. And in that quiet recognition, I smiled. Because this seat I occupied, it wasn't one I had been granted or offered as a courtesy. It was a seat I had created and earned entirely on my own. Sometimes, the most radical and transformative act is not to shout louder than everyone else, It is to remain still, stand firmly in who you are, and unapologetically claim your space without seeking permission or approval. It is the choice to stop saying sorry for existing, for taking up space in a world that constantly underestimated your worth. I used to hold on to the belief that if I followed all the rules perfectly, if I stayed quiet and agreeable, I might eventually be granted a seat at someone else's table. But the truth is far more liberating. If you have already built your own table, with your own hands, you don't need an invitation from anyone. If this story has taught me anything, it's this: silence is not a sign of weakness. Silence, when chosen deliberately, can be one of the most powerful strategies there is. And healing, when it finally comes, doesn't always sound like forgiveness. Sometimes it sounds like stillness. Sometimes it sounds like peace.